Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Case by Case, where we are continuing to deep dive the Delphi case. Tonight, we have a special guest. We are joined by Sergio, and I have already dropped his link to his channel in the chat, Truth Revealed. So if you are not following Sergio, you need to do so ASAP. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome in. We are on the precipice this weekend. Case by Case is doing a lot of work behind the scenes. We are getting ready to do episode 9 of the Delphi Vault, and that's going to be a extensive I think it's the third episode that we're doing on the timeline. The timeline never ends, so I hope you guys all can join us on Monday at 1 p.m. I'll have a special guest there too. And please keep it cordial in the chat. Try to keep we're going to go through and answer questions, and we will try to answer as many as we possibly can. If you were on the replay crew, please hit that like button and subscribe. I will always try to answer questions after a live, so don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section. So let me welcome now our guest, Sergio. Hey, Sergio.
Hey, how's it going?
We're also joined by Cherie, my co-host, who's been here since day one, pretty much. So how are you, Sergio?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. So you dropped your video the other day on Kelsie German, and you explained in your video you viewed 3 different interviews that she did. The podcast of, I think it was her own podcast, the HLN interview, and then another podcast where she is having a conversation with Doug Carter. Was there one that you felt you got more information from than any other?
The video that I used for my video was, I thought, covered everything from start to finish more completely, so that's why I started with that video. There is overlap with the HLN video, so that will be interesting once I'm able to get that one in there too, and then compare when she talks about a specific situation in one video compared to the other one.
So starting off with just your overall impression, and I know that you haven't gone through onto part 2 because this was just part 1. So as of right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, can you give us your impression of Kelsey as far as your deception indicators or deception detectors? Where does she? I know that there's different aspects of her recounting the story and her memories, and there are things that, you know, the gaps in times and the filler words that she's using. But on a scale of 1 to 10, deception wise, and I think that the word deception can be taken the wrong way. And I think you tried to describe that in your video with her, that it's not necessarily deception in regards to an actual crime, more so about things of protecting her family or her emotional state or her sister.
Yeah.
So where do you feel that she falls on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as being a believable participant in this case?
Yeah, that's a great question, and in order to address that, there's a topic that I want to talk about, because deception detection is only about figuring out at what point a person is misrepresenting reality. So
okay.
A question that I get a lot is, how do I know that what I'm doing is accurate? Because what I can tell is deception, and sometimes people are being deceptive about something that's not the main crime or the main incident at hand, and it comes across as deceptive.
Okay.
The irony in that is that I'm trained actually to figure out what the story is. So that's literally my job, is to figure out not just if there's deception, but what the story is, what the true story is. That's why it takes me somewhere between 16 to 40 hours to analyze one statement, because I have to link everything together. So I would
So you're saying, okay, okay, 60 to 40 hours to analyze one statement. What constitutes a statement for you? Is that an interview, or is that where ex, elaborate on that, because that's a lot of hours.
Yeah, that's for doing one video. So
Okay.
it sometimes, like when I'm doing the Karen Reed trial, sometimes I have literally 8 to 10 hours worth of testimony. And so I'll have to break that down into chunks. So, like for Jen McCabe and the Karen Reed trial, that is going to take 4 videos to get through that. But each video takes me somewhere between 16 to 40 hours, somewhere between 2 days worth of work to an entire week worth of work, depending on how complicated their deception pattern is.
Mm-hmm.
So someone like Jen McCabe in the Karen Reed trial, it's very simple because the questions are very direct. On something like analyzing Kelsie German's statement, that is an open statement that is just continuous. There's no questions there. I'm sure there were, but they were either cut out, or in the video that I watched, it was just one continuous statement. So when I do something like that, I am literally, every single time she references something or uses a particular word, like the word told, I'm pulling that word out every single time she used it and comparing it to every other time that she said the word told in every other sentence in her statement, so that I see if there's a pattern, if she's using it the same way every single time. So that's part of baselining. That's something I don't explain very well, or I don't explain it very often in my videos, what baselining really is, because it's very complicated. But to answer your original question, I think her deception level is a 10. Like, she is extremely deceptive in her statement. However, I would say the chances that she was involved in the murder on a scale from 1 to 10 is 0. Like, there's just no indication in any of her language from start to finish that she had anything directly to do with that. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions on this, but her deception is about her knowledge of Anthony's shots and not telling anybody about that.
Okay. So first, there's a question on the screen from Judge Jessica. She's asking, what if the person you're analyzing is very low intelligence? Does that make it more challenging?
No. So now that's a good question, because I get versions of that question all the time. And if there's a correlation, it's usually the more intelligent somebody is, the worse they are at lying. So the more vocabulary that they have to use, the more that I have to analyze. And so it's not something that for me matters. So if I'm analyzing somebody who's highly intelligent or who's not intelligent, it doesn't make my life any easier or harder. It makes what I'm doing usually more clear. But that has no bearing on baselining or on deception detection.
Okay. And there's another question. Do you only look at the words said, or do you also listen to tone and cadence?
I can do everything. So and I would say that I get probably 90% of my information, maybe more than that, from the verbiage itself. That is where all of the best information comes from. Now, the like body language, tone, those things, they can help to marry up and give meaning to some of the verbiage.
Okay.
So if there's areas like, the way that I do it is I watch the video first and I will note anything like, there's a couple places that I had in the video where her tone, her her yeah, her tone, her cadence sort of changed. She either slowed down or her pitch went way up, or there's some things like that. So I would mark that, and then as I'm doing the analysis, I would mark that on my analysis too. And then primarily though, once I have the analysis done, then I'll go back and look for body language and change of tone in areas that are sensitive in the verbiage.
Okay. So I'm gonna throw in a big question. So with Kelsey, when you so one of the things that will, for me, a lot of the things that I took away was the filler words that you described, the so, the after, where you were describing that there's a gap of like lost time, things that she was leaving out, probably intentionally. But besides that, how do you, when you're analyzing somebody in her position, where she was initially a character in the story and then has now became the narrator of the story, and she's fully aware of the outcome. So when she talked about, I know the places that Libby would have gone out here on the trails if she was going willingly, that was kind of the word willingly was kind of emphasized on, but was she using the word willingly because that was an emotion or a memory of the moment, or was it because she knew the outcome?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's that's one of the things that's harder for me to explain to people, but I will give you the science behind it.
Okay.
if you don't believe me, you don't believe me, but there's science, there's a lot of research behind this. And when a person is telling a story that's from memory, so they're telling you about an incident that happened, your brain actually, you cannot see the entire memory all at one time. So you have to play it in your mind like a movie. So when somebody says, tell me about what happened that day, and you say, okay, so I woke up in the morning, what you're doing is you're playing your memory back in your mind, and then you're narrating it. And that is the entire foundational structure of everything that I do. Is it's based on how your brain stores memory and recalls it. So that's that very fundamental rule that when somebody's recounting a memory, they have to use I, they have to use past tense, and they have to use active voice. Those are the requirements in order to be pulling from memory. So what I can tell when people deviate from that is if they stop pulling from memory and they start inserting current information. So in the story, when you're watching, it's like watching a movie. When you've watched, let's say, Harry Potter, you've watched it a million times. If you were to be watching that movie, and then in the movie, the characters start to stop the camera because you've seen the movie before and start telling you what happens at the end, that's what a person is doing when they are recounting current information inside of narrating a memory to you. And so there's a couple points where she actually does that in her story. And when she does that, she is not pulling directly from the memory. She's inserting current knowledge, which is an indicator of fabrication. Which fabrication is a loose word because it doesn't mean that you're lying about murder. It means that you're covering something up. You're either omitting something or you're changing something. And so I have to analyze all of those sections very closely to see what is the common thread that she's either omitting or changing throughout the statement.
Okay. That's very complex to peel. I mean, no, it is. It's very complex to peel back all those layers. And in a situation like this, this is something that if you're in the chat, I know there's questions flying. I'm going to try to get to as many as I can without bombarding. We also want to have a good discussion tonight, guys. So calm down, everybody. And what I would like to remind everybody is that this investigation cannot have 50 participants. We can't have 50 murderers.
Right.
All of these, and I understand that here's my take on the overall impression of why there's a lot of undertones in the way people feel about Kelsey. And that is because I think that a lot of people hold the family and Kelsey. Kelsey, at a certain point in time, became the spokesperson somewhat for the family. And because she was the sister who dropped them off. And I feel that over time, and I'm hoping that you will eventually be able to get there to do an analysis on Becky and Mike Patty, the grandparents, because I think a lot of people hold them accountable for a lot of I don't want to say misspoken words. You can say they're misspoken or they're lies. And they're things that don't make anybody really responsible for the death of these two girls. But for example, when you're listening to Becky Patty describe that time frame of when the girls went missing and what she did, for example, one of those things was I called Kelsey at work and Kelsey left work to come help search. Then you've got Kelsey, who has repeatedly made different statements about, well, I hadn't gone to work. I called my job and let them know I wasn't coming. Then you have her in other interviews stating, well, when I was at work and I had ice cream all over me and I left anyway. It's things like that where people are going, why? You know what I mean? Why the discrepancies? So I think that that's the accountability that people are holding this family to. And I don't want to say that they're wrong for it. But I want to remind everybody that if the unidentified male DNA on these victims was tested and proven to be this individual over here, not a Rick Allen, but somebody completely different, and we find out the storyline has nothing to do with the family, look at what the family's been put through since day one. And this is me playing devil's advocate. I can't not ignore. I personally cannot ignore what the community feels towards the family, because you get to a point where you're going, okay, you guys cannot have this whole story this miscombobulated with the way that some people call it lies. Some people call it misspoken words. Some people call it, differences in the timeline, differences in the variance of who rode with who to the bridge, who searched with who at the bridge, that sort of thing. How does any of that make a difference to you when you're doing an analysis like this? Or have you ever done an analysis on someone and then after the fact found out that maybe they were just a different kind of a personality that you didn't pick up on those signs of deception?
So to date, now not every single analysis has had a chance to be brought to light, So for example, like I did analysis on Ashley Benefield and she was convicted, but I'm 100% certain that she was innocent. So there's I have some huge wins in my career, and I have some that are just not possible to prove one way or another. And I've never been proven wrong on anything that I've done in 20 years. So that is something that I'm very proud of, and that is the reason why I have the confidence to do what I do, because the first time I make a real mistake, that's gonna shake me just because that's who I am. And that'll cause me to go back and have to reanalyze everything that I've ever done. But everything, and I use this every day in my life, so not just on big cases. And that's a whole nother story. I have some pretty funny stories from that. But I would say that as we're looking at this, the thing that's the most important thing to remember is that this is not a movie. So everything is not going to tie together in a nice little bow at the end. People each person has their own storyline and sees themselves as the main character in their own life. And so
They do. Yeah.
what's complicated here, and I'm not, first off, let me say this disclaimer. I haven't looked at any statements from the family. I don't know anything about them. I'm using them not for who they are, but in a completely hypothetical, just random example here. But the family may have their own agenda here. They might, let's say hypothetically, if this was in a different situation, there might be a family that didn't love Libby, and maybe seeks to profit off of her death. Or they might have their own narrative that has nothing to do with murdering her. They might just be taking advantage of the situation, or they might be just completely negligent people that are just terrible, horrible people from start to finish, but didn't have anything to do with the murder. So it's important to remember that this isn't one structured movie plot. This is, it sounds like it's about 20 movie plots that are all wrapped up together around one incident that overlaps in all 20 of these movies. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out. Everyone that I look at is going to have deception. Everyone is going to have deception, because nobody can talk for more than 10 minutes and not be deceptive about something. So I'm going to find deception in any statement that I look at. But that doesn't mean that every single person that I look at murdered her. In this situation, it will all make sense. There will be one storyline in the end that will explain everyone's actions that I look at and how they all tie together. But yes, it can be very confusing when you're looking at one person who's extremely deceptive and you don't know what the truth is, because the only thing you know is that they're being deceptive. And so you want to assume that they had a role to play in the murder.
And that's something that I want to point out again too, because I did get a little bit of flack about this before. It's one thing that I wanted to point out about. I was being accused of being a gatekeeper, I guess, that I wasn't telling you the whole story, the whole narrative. And my thought process was, I wanted your expertise to do the work for you. And I did, like you just explained, you're human. I didn't want to give you any kind of preconceived notions about any of the individuals that you were going to be looking at. I mean, I could go on and on and on about each and every person that you've already analyzed or you're going to be analyzed. So you'd be going in with the preconceived notion, and that's not what I wanted you to do. And the great thing that I feel that's come of that so far is that you've been spot on with what you're seeing and what you're taking away from each individual's words. Now, I think possibly once you get through the whole murder board of all of the suspects and all of the key players, you might be able to configure things a little bit differently. But I didn't want to play a role in your opinion, your analysis, or anything like that. So I'm glad that I didn't, and that was my reasoning why, because I felt like it would just make everything that you said more true blue.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. It's easier for me when I don't have to disregard what people have told me, but I will incorporate information that I have from my own analysis, which I did in this video. So when I analyzed Keegan Klein, now I have information from that, and I incorporated that into this video because it's pertinent, and I can begin to fill in those gaps. Now there will be statements from other people. There's times in the video when I say that I just don't know what happened here, and
you did. Yeah, you've already done that. You've done that a couple of times. I just don't know what happened here. Like when her and her uncle or Cody were down searching, and she was like, "We turned around and we went back." He said there was something happened to change their course of action, but you didn't know what it was.
Yeah, and see, if I was doing this case just by myself, I would circle areas and mark on timelines, on various timelines that I'm creating for each person where I don't know something. And then when I look at somebody else and I see a truthful statement or I get just more information, then I can marry those up so that I can fill in those gaps. Once I've looked at everybody else, I'm going to come back in here and say, well, okay, now I do know what happened in this place where I said I don't know, because I'm going to pull in information from somebody else. So it's not what I'm doing. It's not magic. I'm not making stuff up. What I'm doing is I'm using the information that I have. And if I don't have enough information, I just mark that I don't have enough information there. And sometimes I'll speculate in the video, but I'll try to say I'm speculating here. This could be what this is, just to try and make the video a little more interesting. So I'm not just creating a video with a bunch of gaps, but I will very clearly say that I'm speculating on this, or that I know for certain that something happened.
So did you bring with you tonight any comments or questions from the actual video that you posted yourself? Is there anything that you feel that you need to address or explain or verify or clear up based on anyone who commented on the video of Kelsey's analysis?
Fortunately or unfortunately, I changed the style of the way that I create the videos with this video. So most of the comments were based around this new presentation style. And I got a lot of comments of people from random people that said that they felt like that I gave up on doing analysis and now I'm just trying to tell a story. And,
oh, really?
Yeah. And that's unfortunate. I thought it was pretty clear that my analysis is in there. I'm trying to downplay the technical terms in my video to try and make it a story that people can follow, because the first time that I filmed this, the reason why it took me so long to get this video out is I realized when I watched the video at the end, the storyline doesn't make any sense the way that I presented it, as just a bunch of indicators, because there's so much deception that it's really hard. If all I'm doing is pointing out a bunch of deception, at the end, even I was like, what is happening here? So I had to go back and change the style to be more narrative. But I just want people to know that, like, if there's one thing, there's no question that I want to address, but if there's one thing I want to leave people with, it's that my entire analysis is still in that video. It's just given in a more narrative style. And I am reading it from the teleprompter, because obviously I can't memorize that much. Well, so yeah.
Wait, what? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You have a teleprompter?
Yeah, yeah. I bought a teleprompter actually, so
I need a teleprompter. Oh my goodness. That's awesome. Okay. I'm just teasing.
Yeah, I bought it so that I could write out the narrative and read it. But of course, I'm autistic, and so when I do something without masking, then I have almost no facial expression and no emotion. And so I try very hard to present it in a way that people can, they feel like it's a good story. And so the teleprompter really helps with that. So it allows me to, I don't have to think about the analysis. I've already done it, and I've already written it into a storyline. But as I get used to using the teleprompter, hopefully, I mean, I did get comments that my presentation was monotone, but I mean, that is what it is. That's how I talk. So I just apologize for that up front.
Well, that's okay. I'm looking for a really good question. Or I'll go to my cheat sheet here and ask you. So can you talk about Kelsey, as far as when you say that her deception was more about knowing about Anthony's shots, or maybe possibly covering for Libby? What if I was to tell you that Kelsey had publicly, and I'm not trying to change the course of your analysis or your opinion of her at all, but I feel that I need to say this on behalf of the community who feel a certain way about Kelsey. What if I was to tell you that Kelsey has publicly admitted to catfishing her own sister and pretending to be a boy interested in her for several days and up to a week at a time, and in the recent past of this happening?
Okay, so my first question would be, how do you believe that that has anything to do with this? Because, and I'm not trying to sound
No, go ahead. No, let it go. Let it rip.
No, but I want, because my brain is just analytical. So when you make that statement, I think, okay, like literally probably hundreds of thousands of siblings have done that to their siblings. That in and of itself doesn't pertain to a murder. So
Okay.
I understand that people are trying to draw intent there, but that doesn't actually mean that there's intent there. So there has to be something that still ties that directly to it. Simply catfishing your sibling, I mean, I have 4 kids. You know what my kids do to each other? Like, it's
Oh, I know. I mean, they do things. My kids did the same thing. They tease each other into tears.
Yeah.
So
and so what I need, if I mean, I'll take everything into consideration here, but something like that, without any other context, that is not relevant information to the murder itself. So I would need, like, how did that, like, did she begin to pretend to be Anthony Shots, or just simply doing that is not, it's not directly correlated in and of itself.
So, okay. Let's just, can we, do you mind going down a rabbit hole for just a moment?
No.
Okay, because I feel that it needs to be discussed. And so as far, what you're asking is how does that make it relevant? So I believe that when the story broke, okay, and this is the inner workings of the investigation. It wasn't until years later that the statements were made about Kelsey admitting that she was teasing Libby, catfishing her, pretending to be a guy. But then we find out after the girls were found that during the night of the search and whatnot, Kelsey had access to Libby's iPad and apparently had gone through her recent communications. And one of those being was Anthony Schatz, asking if he had communicated with her, et cetera, et cetera. Then we find out later that I believe it was within 3 days of the crime, Keegan Klein's home they served a search warrant, but that was pretty much kept quiet. It was never brought out into the public light that there was a connection made to Keegan Klein and this Anthony Schatz account. Then we also find out later on that having access to Libby's iPad, Kelsey apparently had gone in and had deleted things in the cloud that affected the phone that was found with the girls. And so that implicated her on another level, I think, with a lot of people saying, why is she doing these things? Then you compound that with her complaining about all of the interviews that she did, that the investigation was kind of pinning her down on her timeline, her narrative, yet we never got any kind of a download of her phone. Number two, we find out at trial, the very first week of trial, she had given her DNA multiple times and it had never been tested. And then we find out that this hair that's in Abby's fingers, they really never came out and even said that they are 100% certain that this hair belongs to Kelsey. They say it's family related. So there seems to be this undertone of cloud over Kelsey and why she wouldn't have been treated like everybody else, being the last person to see the girls. So that's the rabbit hole that I think a lot of people are wanting answers to. And I'm not saying that I have an opinion one way or the other. I'm throwing this information out there because I know that's what the community, when they see Kelsey and they think of Kelsey, that's what they're thinking. These bottomless, unanswered questions of when you've analyzed her partially already, at what point does the self-preservation of my family, my sister was probably doing something that she shouldn't have done, when do the brakes get put on by Kelsey to say, okay, I'm going to let everybody know right now what the hell was actually going on. I didn't want her to go to the bridge that day. I knew she was up to meeting someone that she had never met before from online. And I tried to stop it without getting her in trouble. At what point in time, as a sister, do you feel like this person should have said the truth? Versus almost 9 years later now, some people feel like we still haven't heard the truth.
Yeah. And that's a good question. It's relevant, but to me, this is none of the stuff that we just talked about and described ties directly to a murder. What it ties to is looking suspicious, right? That's the problem here. And it's very clear that Kelsey is withholding information. She doesn't want to get in, at that time. when she was 17, when the murders happened, she had information that she withheld. Now, part of the one of the things that I am really interested in personally from what I've learned so far is the involvement, let's call it the level of corruption of the police department compared to the investigation that they were actually doing. So they were looking at Kelsey. They interviewed her 3 times. They interrogated her 3 times before she had done this interview. That's what she says in this interview. And she's clearly withholding information. So I would expect that they would have interviewed her 3 times, because anyone who is worth anything as a detective or an interrogator is going to realize that she's withholding information and there was a murder that happened. And so,
and can I ask you this? So, based on that, and based as your experience as an interrogator, why would they have not downloaded the information off of her phone? If they felt that she was withholding and her story wasn't coming across, I don't want to say not believable, but like there were gaps, there were holes, there were things that they could tell that she was being deceptive about. Why would they? Are they going to treat a 17-year-old victim's family member different based on the fact that she's a family member? Or is that, do you read any more into that, or do you not have an opinion at all?
I mean, I can just speculate. So
Okay.
I haven't analyzed enough to have an educated opinion on this, but my speculation at this point is that they continued to interrogate her, because they knew that she was being deceptive, and she was being deceptive about knowing that that her sister was going to meet some random guy off the internet, and she didn't tell anybody that. So that's a massive secret, and she clearly was trying to hide that, and then she clearly was trying to hide that from the police in the beginning, and it seems like they picked up on that early. And so the part that I'm speculating on is that I think they knew that she didn't do it, and if they were trying to pin this on somebody and they knew that they didn't have the right person there that they could actually pin it on, because either they knew her geolocation from her cell phone or something like that, they had information, and if they were going to find a fall guy, they needed somebody who was going to work. And now this, like I said, this is all speculation. There's too many like real problems in the police investigation. So that just needs to be looked into at this point. I'm not going to blame Kelsey for the police doing a bad job in their investigation. And what they did goes beyond doing a bad job. What they did is purposeful. So you can't just not run people's DNA because you're a bad detective. Like that's purposeful.
Do you have an opinion about, I know I've seen a couple of questions in the chat about people asking what your opinion is about Kelsey implementing the baby talk. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I would need more video of her at that age. So as she gets older, she still has remnants of talking like that, but she sounds older when she's older. Now, I would need to see other video of her at 17 or younger to say that talk, because there are people, especially, and I do not want to speculate on her upbringing. I know nothing about her upbringing, but if kids go through trauma, just any sort of, and her family situation looks messed up, but my guess is that she probably has emotional, or at that time, she probably had emotional issues that might cause that, that would be from her family. I don't think that she doesn't come across to me as being intelligent enough to be considered some genius mastermind here. And changing her speech like that is not a that's not some tactic to come across as some like, I don't know, a tactic of not looking guilty. I just don't see that.
Okay.
But to verify that, I would want to see another video of her at that age doing some, extended talk about something. But my guess is that baby talk is actual emotional immaturity that is probably caused by some sort of trauma.
There is a video. I'm going to send it to you. There's a video that she does with a guy with the last name of Renner that a lot of people feel is one of the most complex interviews that she does. So I will send that to you for you if you have room to incorporate that into your part 2.
Yeah.
Even if you have to extend when you put your part 2 video out. I attempted to send that to you in the very beginning. I think we just got caught up in talking about other things. So with Kelsey, besides for me, I feel like the gaps in times that you pointed out, the afters,
Mm-hmm.
there's no, I know maybe at the time, and then now she's trying to maintain a story. Whatever she was doing with the boyfriend prior to the grandma phone call coming in, that to me is really insignificant. But for me, the gap in the story, as far as, okay, let me back up. When you analyze the fact that you feel that there's this type of motherly feeling that Kelsey is portraying over Libby, as far as, you talk about the woman. Stop. Woman. Do you feel that first Kelsey's using that term woman because so much time has elapsed and there's been a lot of discussion about what's been missed out on in Libby's life, as far as, graduating high school, getting married, going off to college, et cetera, all of the things that come with real life activities. So can you differentiate for us when you heard her describe Libby as a woman and you connected it to how do you describe a 14-year-old as a woman? Can you differentiate the context of where Kelsey may have been using that reference from?
Yeah, so that is a very interesting. It's one of my favorite anomalies or sort of quirks of language. Is there's a lot of different descriptors for what you call a person, and again, it's important. This is that really hard concept for most people to wrap their mind around. But when you're recalling a story, you have to be reliving it. So you start the movie in your head and you have to relive it, because it's not a movie, it's your actual life. So you lived it once and it's a memory, so you have to relive that memory. What happens there is, well, let me first say that it's not possible that she could have confused like the current time with that memory, especially because Libby never became a woman. So if she was actually putting the current time into her narrative from back then, then that still wouldn't work. So she could only have been drawing from the past there, and her tone changes right after that. So you can tell that that was a mistake. Once she said it out loud, that is very clear that she knows that that was the wrong word. But the reason why people use that word is it has only to do with sexual maturity. So for example, if your spouse comes home from work and says, "Oh yeah, I had a good day at work," instead of saying there's a new employee, if your spouse says, "Oh, there's this new woman at work and I'm showing her the ropes," that's very problematic because that means that there's an element of sexual attraction there. So the word woman differentiates from a girl in the fact that there's a process of moving into womanhood. And it's the same thing with men. So the difference between a boy and a man is sexual maturity. And so when she says that there, the only reason that she would say that there is because she is aware of sexual activity that is going on with Libby at that time. So she had to have known of. Now, I don't know what sexual activity, but because there was explicit pictures going back and forth and stuff like that, it could have been that. It likely was, because we know that was happening, and it's likely that Kelsey knew that was happening as well. There could be other things as well. So if Libby had a sexual relationship with a boyfriend that Kelsey was aware of, that would also cause that language change. But because the topic of this conversation all revolves around that night, and we know that there was sexually explicit pictures going back and forth that night at that sleepover, that it's highly unlikely that she was unaware of that, and that caused that language. So it fits together right there. And if the picture fits together, you don't want to ignore that. But if the picture doesn't fit together, you don't want to pretend like it does.
Okay.
So hopefully that helps explain her use of the word woman there. That's a very, very powerful indicator. There's areas where I'm trying to figure out what's happening in the missing time, but the word woman is very distinctive. That's a very definitive indicator right there.
So where do you, okay, so going into part 2, and I have an additional video I'm going to send you. And then I'm going to have to go back and dig it out. I also have it's a blog or a paper that Kelsey wrote as a school project, which is very bizarre. I'll share that with you as well.
Is that before or after the murders?
I think chat, help me out. I want to say it was before. Chat, the blog before. Yeah, it was before. So it's just a very bizarre story that she writes. So I'll share that with you. But going forward, I don't know how much. I know that you have a game plan as far as where this analysis is taking you. But as far as Kelsey goes, what are you looking? What is going to be your avenue going for part 2? What other elements of her storyline, her narrative, the triggers that you need to see about her deception? What's the avenue that you're going to go?
I mean, so there's no avenue. All I do is analyze the statement. So, again, I'm autistic. My brain basically works like a black and white computer. So I'm just going to analyze the statement and see what comes out of it. And
So when I say avenue, okay, so when I say avenue, when you, for example, in a case like this, just, because this case is not as public, it is, but it isn't as such as like the Karen Reed case. Like the Karen Reed, you can actually sit and watch the witnesses testify. You can see them physically. In this case, you cannot. You only get bits and pieces. So when I say the road that you're going to take or the avenue, so when you watch one of these videos, do you decide that you want more about the discussion at hand, and then you do your own research as your own tool to help you get a better perspective of who you're analyzing, I guess is what I meant to say.
you mean like, who do I want to look at next, kind of a?
Well, I mean, like, so when you like you had 3 videos that you used throughout this first analysis of Kelsey. And do you feel absolutely confident that you have enough information from her to do part 2, or do you feel that you need to pursue additional interviews to get a better perspective of the type of person that you're analyzing?
Yeah, actually, one interview is enough, because again, what I'm trying to do is figure out. I have an ultimate question that I have to answer, which is, was she involved or not? And I can get that answer from one interview. Now, if there, in this case, I think it would be helpful to the viewer if I continue to analyze where those discrepancies came from. I need to actually analyze the discrepancies as well, because I think that'll help put that, this whole thing to bed. And then once this has been, thoroughly and completely looked at, then I'll move on and, look at the next person. But if I was treating this like an investigation, like an active investigation, I would only get the information that I need and move on. So I wouldn't need to look at all of the little discrepancies, because in the end, unless Kelsey has information that somebody else lies about, then I need that information, because I need to be able to fill in a gap where somebody else lies in a later stage. But yeah, so I am going to continue to look at and do as thorough of a look at Kelsey, just simply because I think people want to see that. But at this point, I've already analyzed this whole video all the way to the end. I haven't filmed it yet, because I actually tried to film it and I had a couple of complicating factors there. So I had to just delete that old video, start it over. But yeah, I mean,
I have a couple of clips that a couple of videos that I want to touch on that kind of might be a little bit of a prelude for you to navigate through where your brain is wanting to take you next. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to tell everyone what, and I've been asked this question during another live, during one of the Vault series that I do, going over the timeline, etc. They've asked me, how is what Sergio is doing helping Rick Allen? That was one of the questions. And I answered it. But now that's going to be part A of the question. I'm going to let you answer that. And then B, what is your goal for analyzing all of these people involved directly with this investigation? I'm going to let you tell your truth.
So the best way I can describe this is the movie Gladiator, the original movie Gladiator from like whatever 1990s or something, I don't know, a long time ago. If you guys have seen that, there's a scene in there where he goes out the first time he fights in the arena. He goes out and slaughters everybody in like less than a minute, and the crowd is just silent. And you know, he does that very iconic "Are you not entertained?" Scene, and that for me, that was analyzing Richard Allen, because I analyzed that his statement, and he's truthful in there. There's what else do you need to see, right? That's my "Are you not entertained?"
Are you not entertained? That's great movie, by the way. I love that movie, but go ahead.
So in order to get Richard Allen out of prison, I need to generate a wave of momentum. And the biggest problem right now is that everybody following this case is not on the same page. So, you know, as everybody's spinning in different
chat, are you listening? Not everybody following this case is not on the same page. That is a masterful statement right there. I agree 100%. And that is the purpose of why I do the Vault series, is I'm trying to eliminate, I don't want to say the waste in the case. I want to eliminate what's not realistic or what's not plausible and focus on what is factual. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean that what you're doing and what I'm doing, it's a principle like water. One drop of water isn't going to change anything. And if you have an entire ocean, but it's all going in different directions, it doesn't do anything either. So what you need to do, what I need to do, is I need to show everybody who did what. And once there's one timeline where everyone can see exactly how everything fits together, what I'm hoping is that everybody will all start moving in the same direction. And once everybody moves in the same direction, that's going to create a tremendous amount of public pressure on the you know, that police department, the lawyers. You know, it's going to bring everything to light. You know, the public pressure is what's going to change Richard Allen's situation. And so I am just one cog in this machine, and the only thing that I know how to do is get the story straight. So that's the one thing that I can do, and then I'm just going to do that, or you know, based on my technique, what I through my analysis, I'm going to give you my version of the story, of the truth, and then let people do with that what they will.
Yeah, and I think that like I said, I think I said this before we even came on the live, is that I feel the one great thing about this case, although it is tragic, the outcome was tragic, the victims, it was just all the way around tragic, but I feel like this case has added to the public information highway of understanding that our justice system does not work properly, and that our politicians, our judges, our prosecutors, sometimes, especially in a small county, in a small rural area, they have way more power and way more ability to sweep things under the rug. And it takes a case like this to bring that out into the light. And we've just watched from beginning to end a case that was one of the most highest profile cases in the country be completely kept in the dark, along with the suspect, along with the defendant. I mean, he was shipped immediately off into a maximum security prison, held in solitary confinement with no communication, no contact, not even with his civil rights were violated a gazillion times. And there are still people in this neck of the woods who are championing that. And it's not a matter of sitting here and, you know, I've been accused of supporting a child killer. That's a horrific thing to be called. I don't believe that's what I'm doing. However, at the end of the day, I'm championing your rights as a human being, and I'm championing your rights under the United States Constitution, which means you are innocent until proven guilty. You don't get to be treated like a lunatic serial killer. And the laws and the the government in itself in a state does not have the right to violate your life at every level. I mean, you're talking, he's too incompetent to take the stand. Um, he's incompetent on this level, but we're going to take every word out of his mouth where he says, I killed Abby and Libby, as a true factual confession. What they did here was just blatantly, they have disregard for any kind of truth, law, order, constitution, civil rights, and it's just all been fully put on display. And as a community, people are still divided, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
That for me is hard to swallow. If at the end of the day, it turns out that Rick Allen was involved in this crime, I will want to see full punishment. What I'm here for is I want law and order, and I want someone to be treated the way that our justice system was created for them to be treated. And I want the right person behind bars. And I don't believe that it's Rick Allen. And I also want to know what happened to these two little girls. So I think we're all here for the same reason. It's just we all have to, at some point, we all have to get off the conspiracy theory train and start looking at what's plausible, what's realistic, and why this happened, when it happened, and who was involved and who's being protected. I feel like there is someone being protected. Oh.
Yeah, can I add one thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Let me get off my soapbox.
No, I think it's very important for people to keep in mind that you have to either believe that there's a problem with the judicial system in Delphi at that time, that there was a problem at that time. If you believe that, then you can't also believe that Kelsie German was involved in the murder, because there's Kelsie German, a 17-year-old girl, she doesn't have the power and influence to tell judges what to do and to corrupt the police department. Whoever they're covering for, it's not some 17-year-old girl. So there's a very serious disconnect there. If you believe that Kelsey did this, especially after my analysis, and I'm obviously more certain of my analysis than you guys are yet at this point, because I've already completed the analysis, but you haven't seen all the videos. So I'm coming from a little bit different place than you guys have seen as far as my analysis. But I mean, just if you believe that Kelsey did it, then you have to say that the police department is not corrupt, that they are just doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that they didn't make any mistakes. Or if they did, that what they did it would have had to have been mistakes, that it couldn't have been purposeful. But I mean, common sense is going to tell you not running DNA, that's not a mistake. That's purposeful, So that's the kind of information that I don't want to cloud my analysis. But realistically, I mean, my analysis is my analysis. I use the same rules every single time for every single person that I analyze. So it's not really like my analysis can change. But yeah, this is a problematic thing, that Kelsey is not the powerhouse figure here that is going to have the ability to change the course of an investigation on her own.
Right. And that's part of what I'm trying to do with going back to the very beginning of the case, with the vault and collecting all of the factual things, because I feel that, you know, your memory fades with time, and an early investigation, everybody, if you think that there's going to be some sort of conspiracy or corruption, that's going to evolve over time. It's everything that happened in the very beginning stages of the investigation that I feel is the most real. People's, you know, when we obviously this case is graced with a lot of Facebook groups, screenshots, text messages that people have shared, and I feel that going back to the very beginning is where we're going to find a lot of the truths and the answers, and do away with a lot of the conspiracies or the rumor mill, the he said, she said. So I will tell you that from day one of following this case, I had huge admiration for Doug Carter. I believed that Doug Carter's heart was in this case, and that the emotions that you seen in front of the cameras behind the podium was real. And by the end of this case, I felt so completely betrayed and so duped by someone that, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, I would have championed. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And I'm going to let you, Sergio, tell us what you think.
Specifically about.
You don't have to go into all of the details.
So I did hint at the beginning of my first video that there's going to be something in the second video about Doug Carter. And I just want to say that if you guys were paying attention to the little lesson that I put at the beginning of that video, then you may have noticed that Kelsey doesn't use any of those indicators. So you may have been thinking, why was he talking about somebody who says I, or repeats words over and over again? Because Kelsey never does that. But Kelsey does interview Doug Carter in one of those videos. And so if you want, you might go back and look at that video, and you might have a little bit of a preview. Watch that little podcast that she's doing with him. That, without any of my analysis, just knowing a little bit about what you know now, you might see that interview differently.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for those in the chat who's, you know, they're like, well, I had Doug pegged from day one. I guess that's the realism of why I'm sitting here where I'm sitting, is because I didn't start following this case assuming that law enforcement was corrupt. You know, I believe that they truly were investigating this crime the way that it should be investigated. And it was over time that my opinion started to change, and things just weren't adding up. And here I am. So I thought we would end the evening with one of the worst press conferences this case has seen thus far, with Doug Carter.
Citizens of this county and of this city. It's amazing acts of unbelievable courage and self-service and self-sacrifice. I wish you all could have been in the courtroom today and heard the victim impact statements. I, I'll always remember them. And I hope you'll get the transcripts and read what was said and try and understand the context of those words, even though you weren't in the courtroom. Over the course of these last many years, there have been many investigative strategies. Any notion of a cover-up, any notion of us deciding the outcome of this, any notion of any connection to anything else is not correct. It's not correct. I've never been a detective in my entire lifetime, but I get to represent some of the best on the planet Earth. And I listened to them intently. And when they made strategy decisions associated with what the next steps would be, my job was to support them, and I stand by those decisions, every single one of them. The gag order. We lived by that. We lived by that gag order. The defense did not.
That's an absolute lie.
And it cost a human life. Anybody that shares those photographs of those two little girls should be held accountable, whether they're in the public sphere, whether they're emailed to you, whether you found them in a place you didn't want them to see. I hope that if you ever see them, you'll picture your own children as Abby and Libby. I'll never forgive that. I will never, ever forgive that. We lived by the gag order. Documents were released from the defense that drove a public narrative that many of you talked about. And damn it, I wish I could have responded, but I was not going to violate what Judge Gall said. So they were able to get these documents out there and create a public narrative that you and many others, many of you, and many others believed around the globe. Baldwin and Rossi are responsible for that, not this team. The family effects, I think you'll see the words that were spoken by the folks that spoke today about their lives and how they've been forever changed, how they'll never be the same. And they said it in ways that were beautiful in some kind of a mysterious way. There's an attorney in Indianapolis by the name of Guy Relford. And I heard Guy on the radio after the verdict when a lot of hate mail came, death threats came. And I heard Guy Relford say that day on the radio, and I called him 15 minutes after he said it. And after 40 years in this business, I never thought about the jury's perspective. But he said the only people that mattered in that courtroom was the jury. And he went on to talk about, he's a very bright attorney. He went on to talk about what they can see that we can't, that you couldn't. They could see the defense. They could see the state. They could see the witnesses, feel the emotion, and they could see Richard Allen. I'd never thought about that perspective because we have a singular view most times. You, me, it's human nature. Judge Gall was the keeper of the peace in that courtroom, but the people that mattered were those 12 jurors. And we have a system of justice that allows them to decide the fate of a human being. That's what our founders had established. And that's what they did. I hope you all understand that what you say and how you report matters more than you can ever possibly comprehend. This is an opportunity for us to all learn about what social media is and isn't, what we should do and what we shouldn't, and understand that their words have consequences to other human beings. I appreciated Guy's perspective, and it changed my view of the criminal proceeding. Richard Allen knew. We live in a country where people can hate. People can say things about other people. And that's okay. Hate me. It's okay. It's one of the only countries in the world where you can. So hate me if you want to. The investigative collaboration is something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life. There's no way we could possibly chronicle it or articulate it or write about it or anything. There's no way we could ever do that. We are human beings, and there were mistakes made. But there was never a mistake made that we knew was wrong and we did it. I'll crawl across shards of hot glass for Jerry Holman. Jerry Holman is not a liar.
Oh my God.
Jerry Holman gave the last 8 years of his life to something much greater than himself. We fussed with each other throughout the course of this in conclusion. We argued with each other. I remember Tobe and I had an argument right here in this other room in April of 19, as you should expect us to. There was no groupthink. We debated each other, as you should expect us to. But then the defense spins it into incompetence. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous nonsense for Baldwin and Rozzi to have done that. And finally, most importantly, to the Delphi community and to the family of Abby and Libby. Words cannot possibly explain what we all feel. But what Nick McClellan did and the rest of the team that was associated with this, every single time it was about something other than themselves. It was about this community and that family. And we owe them a debt of gratitude that can never possibly be repaid. How about we start to heal now? How about we hit that reset button and understand that justice in this country was served, and if you don't like justice in this country, go do another one. Let's heal.
And that's where I'm cutting him off. If you don't like justice in this country, go to another one. Thoughts on that? Wait a minute. What do we do here? There we go. There we go. What's happening with my thingy? Okay, there we go. Back to normal. You don't like justice in this country, go to another one. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
So, this is a huge indicator of deception, by the way, touching your nose and touching your
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know, there's probably not time to go back and watch the whole thing over again, but if you're interested in going back and watching this again and pay attention to what he says right before he touches his nose or right after, you're going to see this in a whole different way.
Okay. Guys in the chat, do you hear that? There's your homework.
Yeah.
So it's.
I think, I don't know. I'm interested who you want me to look at next.
Okay. Well, we know who you're going to look at next. And so you're going to do part 2 of Kelsey. And then you'll more than likely go into where that leads you. And then I do have a couple of suggestions for you after that, sort of some connections to Ron Logan. So I guess we will chat this week. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's Friday night. I'm going to let you go. It's it's 8:30. That way your whole evening's not taken up and everybody else can enjoy their Friday night. I know I've had a hard, long week. So thank you, Sergio, so much. I really, this one was by far so far my favorite one, just because I think that you went into this one the most blind. And you did, you really explained a lot, listening to Kelsey. You're going, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying she's meaning. That was really important to me. So I've listened to it now about 4 times. So I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, if there's one thing that I'd like people to take away, for everyone to take away, especially after the second video, is that it's important to try and remember what it was like when you were 17, because the world just, things that as an adult seem like, you should know that this isn't that big of a deal. And if you would just say, come clean with everything. When I was 17, everything was all about me, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I did something that I wasn't supposed to do, I wasn't going to tell anybody about it. I didn't want to look bad. My worldview was so small when I was 17. And I want people, especially people who are, in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, anything, a little bit removed from that, try and remember what that was like, because you can see a lot of emotion from a 17-year-old or a 19-year-old that to an adult looks unnecessary, but to a kid, there's stuff that weighs very heavily that
Mm-hmm.
as an adult we just sort of write off. So I want people to keep that in mind. And when this next video comes out, and I'll get more practice in front of that teleprompter, and hopefully my videos will become, a little more engaging. But yeah, just keep that in mind, because I'm hoping that I can get it all into one video, because there's a couple, the HLN thing, I think I just want to hit some highlights on that, and then whatever, and then you were going to send me some stuff, but I'll see if we can get that all into one video and wrap everything up nicely. So
yeah, I will definitely. Yeah, I'll send you at least one more. And I'm going to add right here at the bottom of the screen is Sergio's YouTube channel link. It's the Truth Revealed. It's at the very top of the chat. If you guys scroll up, I will go over here and I will grab it for you and I'll add it. But I will add it back in the chat so you guys can find it rather quickly. But it's Truth Revealed. Go follow and subscribe to his channel. And he doesn't just cover the Delphi case. He covers, right now, he's got a lot of interesting videos up about the Karen Reed case. And are you looking at anyone else? Are you looking at any other cases?
I would really like to start covering the Diddy case, but that's I just don't. There's not enough time in my day.
Well, and it's not televised either. That makes it a little bit more difficult. So, yeah.
I'll probably cover that after we get through everybody who has some sort of narrative in this case, the Delphi case, and then we'll see what happens with the Karen Reed case. But I might be pretty much done I did all the analysis on the first Karen Reed case, and so they're not even having all the same witnesses from that case.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah, and I think there's a big reason for that. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to the next Karen Reed case, which is not going to be Karen Reed.
Okay. Yeah, right. Me too. Well, not that I have more time on my schedule to add anything else, because this one's taken up a lot. Plus Ashley's case, which we're kind of in a standstill at the moment. So, Anywho, thank you for being here, Sergio. Thank you, Cherie. Thank you, mods. Thank you, everybody who donated memberships or donated tonight to the channel. Truly appreciate it. Thank you so much. I do know that I already have a link for Monday nights or Monday afternoons, episode 9 of The Vault. You don't want to miss that. It's going to be extensive. I may go live Saturday or Sunday. I'm not sure. It'll be kind of a last minute thing. But in the meantime, thank you all so much. Thank you, Sergio. Subscribe to his channel. See you guys later. Make sure you guys hit the like button and subscribe on your way out the door. Bye.
Bye.